Right, Coach, thank you for meeting with me. I appreciate that your time is very scarce this time of year, preparing for games and the showcases. We're in your office in the Diamond Dash Youth headquarters in the Woodlands. Can you give me a brief background on yourself, your career, and your responsibilities here within the organisation?
I'm from Denver, Colorado. 25 plus years in youth soccer. I oversee the academy boys and oversee the academy girls development academy program for the club.
Excellent. So, um, within our club, in your opinion, why do we place new and inexperienced coaches with the youngest age groups? And in your experience around the country, is that a tactic that is used nationwide with other soccer clubs?
Most of the time around the country, the youngest coaches, or the youngest players are always coached by parents. So it's actually rare that you would have young coaches that have some, if any, kind of background in the game coaching. That's rare. That the way things are done here with bringing kids in from Europe is completely different than anywhere else I've ever worked or ever seen. Most of the coaching at the youngest age groups is all parent-based coaching with some kind of adult overvision over the director of coaching model where a coach oversees 10, 20, 50, 70 teams. Young coaches always seem to start at the bottom. I mean, because it's just a matter of working your way up. I mean, very rarely does somebody start at the very, very top, unless you're a big-time ex-pro, and then I guess if you're Thierry Henry, you can coach who you want. But a lot of it's based on playing background and just where you came from as your starting point. But majority of time, they're still given younger teams.
You talked there on the difference, the two different types of either getting a parent coach or getting a young, you said there, a young European guy. What do you think is the difference in the child's learning within those two models, within your experience of just being around the game for 25 years?
The players learn a little bit more technically from the professional coach. The parent coach cares a lot more, so your player retention sometimes is better. They keep teams together for longer because the parent takes ownership over the group for his kid. It can backfire with overzealous parents at times, but generally speaking, you can, if well overseen with the younger kids, you can manage it with the quote unquote professional overseeing the parent coach. Doesn't work in our market currently because this is a higher end community, more affluent community, and they're willing to pay for other services. So the parent coach model doesn't work, but in a lot of places the parent coach model is going on where they're overseen by a director of coaching.
So in your opinion, how would you define the difference between coaching and teaching, and how can you create a culture that promotes coaches becoming better teachers?
I don't think there is any difference between coaching and teaching, especially not youth players. I think there is a difference if you're talking about professional teams. Those guys aren't really coaching, they're managing. There is tactics involved, if you're talking about professional any sport, where obviously you have to train the players to run a particular system, and you could consider that part true, I guess, coaching. But the majority of time you're managing personalities as the head guy, and your assistant coaches are doing the tactical input. At the youth level, it's completely different in the sense that you're at the beginning, you're the first introduction to sort of a socialized norm other than school. So first introduction to a team environment, first introduction to a new skill level, and then you go through the process of adolescence where you become a major role model for young kids who are at a state of oftentimes rebellion or looking for a different leader other than what they've had at home for 14 years. So your responsibilities are different, and the life lessons and the challenging of players is a little bit more important, because majority of them will not go on to, become professional athletes. So, but to wrap it up, I don't think there's any difference in teaching soccer or coaching soccer than there is in teaching mathematics. It's another subject. It is what it is.
So I presented you with a 77 foundation phase curriculum that you've reviewed. I'm grateful for that. In your opinion, what are the strengths and weaknesses of that document, and what are the next steps?
We need to make sure people understand the criticalness of ages and stages going back to teaching. If I'm teaching the piano, I don't start off with Beethoven. And that's kind of what most people want to do. They want to teach everything, as opposed to just teach Mary Had a Little Lamb and how do your fingers move in that process and work your way through the stage of development. So what are the focuses, in terms of the 77, in terms of individual skills? Which skills are you teaching? Which skills are important? How are you dealing with them? The easiest one to point out right now is heading wouldn't be introduced there because of the concussion scenario, even though it's a skill in the game when it becomes 11 aside, but you wouldn't introduce heading because it's not appropriate. So that's the simplest way to look at it, but that's the biggest step for that. The next biggest step is probably to clarify, additional best practices or best activities, not best practices. That's the next step, and we need to clarify the language. The glossary needs more terminologies or clarified terminology of what coach speak things actually mean. What does it mean to press? What does it mean to, what's the front foot? What does it mean to tag and play? Those things need to be defined.
Do you think the weaknesses then are either the depth they're going into, or the fact that we're not making those activities and practices crystal clear? Or both?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure there's a weakness in it, in the sense that you can produce whatever kind of curriculum you want to produce. Ultimately, the teacher in the particular classroom or the coach on a particular field has to be able to take the content and actually train the players, or take the content and teach 4 + 4 is 8. And how they go about doing that's going to have a little bit of their own personality, a little bit of their own personality in it. And so I don't know where the weakness right now lies, because it hasn't been out long enough. We haven't gone through it long enough to know it needs to be tested. People need to go work with it and use it and expand on it and go. It's a platform.
Yeah. That ties into my next question. So once I finalised it and it's been approved by you and Phil, how would you then present that message to the coaching staff and the players in an effective manner where they feel motivated to learn it and then grow with the material?
Adult education is so different than kids' education. Adults have to take it and make it their own. They have to have their own inspiration to do it. Kids will just do something because they're told to do it, and so it's very, very, very different. I don't see this as a secondary effect on kids. They learn from the activities presented, so we've got to get coaches to understand how they're interested in mastering the actual art of coaching or the art of teaching, and that starts with this as a fundamental basis or talking point, and then also we have to allow them the freedom to expand on it, to have input into it back and say, okay, what did I use, what did I not use, and why? So it's more of a starting point or a foundation than it is ever going to be a final product. I don't know. It's going to be very difficult. You'll be able to judge it based on the quality of players that are produced. That's if there's a change, or if you put it out here in the Woodlands and you put it out in the South, and you go to both environments and you see similar activities, then you know that you've had a impact.
Coach, that's all I've got today. Thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.